I want to express my thanks for inviting me, and I'm excited to talk to your audience. I wish I could see you and be able to feel each of your personalities. But I'm a rancher here in southern Nevada. Been ranching most all my life, and what we do is we our livestock, mainly cows, harvest this desert, and we make a renewable resource. And the renewable, or we use up the renewable resource, and we make a commodity. It's an edible commodity. It's your hamburger, your good steaks are good, and that's what Cliven Bundy does is produce for you, the people. Now, what this battle has been about is between the rancher and the United States government. The question is who owns this land? Is it sovereign state of Nevada, or is it federal land belonging to the United States government? And, I carry a constitution in my pocket, and I believe that this land belongs to we people of the state of Nevada. I do not raise my cattle on public land, and not the public land of the United States. I raise my land or my cattle in the state of Nevada, in Clark County. And if it's in public land, it has to be public land of the people of Clark County, Nevada. So the question here is who's the bad guy? Who's trespassing? Is it Cliven Bundy and his ranch trespassing on Clark County, Nevada public land? Or is it the federal government trespassing on this land? And in the Constitution, I can only find that the federal government can only own very limited amount of property. And it's spelled out very precise and correct in the Constitution. We believe the Constitution to be the supreme law of the land. And so we have all this question, all these bureaucracies overpowering us in our land deals, in all of our deals, our schools, our churches, everything we deal with, we have this overreach of the federal government. And what I'm saying, this is what I say. I say let's go back to the Constitution of the United States, and if we have to start over, better do it. And now's the time to get the job done. We've got a couple of months here before elections. These elections are very important to us. We could choose candidates that are constitutional, that believe in state sovereignty, believe in small government, believe that our county sheriff has the only elected power, has only elected sheriff power in this country. We can do that now. We've got a couple of months to do it. Let's quit worrying about who's Democrat and who's Republican, that's blue and red. Let's quit worrying about it. Let's start worrying about what candidate is going to stand up for our Constitution, our freedom, our liberty, our personal agency. Each of our sovereignty is very important. Let's choose candidates that are going to be believe in these things and quit about those candidates that are central government, big government, and want to get almost $18 trillion in debt. Let's don't candidates that want to raise that the debt ceiling. We need to get rid of that debt in America. Now's our chance. Now's the time. Let's get it done.
Well, Cliven, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions here, just kind of get into this whole thing about when did you first make the decision to become defiant, if you will, to the government's wishes to take your land?
Well, this goes back a long ways. It goes back past 20 years. 20 years ago, I could see that the federal government, the Bureau of Land Management, the Forest Service, the Park Service, these people were only their only desire was to eliminate us ranchers off this land. And they did eliminate 52 of my neighbors off Clark County and Nevada land. And I'm the last man standing. But when I got to that point, I said, well, these people are supposed to be land managers. They're supposed to be managing my land, my ranch. Now, what they're doing is managing me out of business. And so I said no. And then later I said, hell no. And what I did is I fired the BLM. I said, if you're going to manage me out of business, I'm no longer going to pay you. And I do not need your services. And so I've had the services for BLM, and of course, they've been pretty upset about this, and they've tried to, crowd me out, eliminated me, they've tried to lawsuit me. I've been in lawsuits for basically the last 20 years, and basically what I'm saying is I'm saying to their judges and their courts, you have no constitutional jurisdiction or authority over this land. You have no policing power, and you are not going to rule with unlimited power over me and my ranch or this land that belongs to we the people.
Now, Cliven, you bring up the fact it's been about 20 years, probably maybe 21 years back to 1993 when you first started to have some real problems with the lease agreement that came out of the BLM. Do you remember that lease agreement?
Well, I remember lease agreements. Let me tell you about lease agreements. These are called grazing permits. And you know what the grazing permit is when a rancher signs that grazing permit, he's signing a contract with the United States government to manage his ranch. And that's one of the biggest problems we're having across the western United States, even today, is these ranchers, and not only ranchers, these miners and these loggers and all these people, and even our local governments keep assigning contracts with the federal government. And when you sign a contract with the federal government, that's a contract. That's legitimate. That's constitutional. And once you sign a contract, you're going to end up in a federal court fighting over if there's a problem there. And in the rancher's sense, have you ever seen a rancher across the United States in the last 50 years ever win a court case in a federal court over land?
Yeah.
Never has happened.
Yeah, it never has happened. Well, let's fast forward. You went to court several times, and the court said no, and finally the BLM had to act. And when did you find out, or how did you get the information the BLM was going to come out to your land and seize your cattle?
Well, the BLM puts out a public notice, I don't know, like 10 days before their action. And they did put a notice out saying that they was going to come and gather the cattle off my ranch, and that, it was a public notice. They did that a month or two before they actually come and tried to seize my cattle. But you got to remember, they had a court order saying they could seize and impound my cattle from a federal court, which I said does not have jurisdiction and authority because I do not have a contract with the federal government. I did not have a contract, and I do not graze my cattle on federal land. I graze my cattle within the state of Nevada. And so far as I'm concerned, that court has no jurisdiction and authority. Now, I did not ever get a due process in a state court. And so I've never been before, I've never been before any judge, even a federal judge. But I've never been before a state court, never been able to argue my rights, like things like water rights, grazing rights, access rights, property rights in the range improvements. I've never been able to argue things like I should have the rights of all other citizens to be out on this land, to fish, hunt, camp, and all of those things. I've never had due process.
Well, Cliven, the day that you found out the BLM was showing up, how did you find that out that they were actually there?
Well, for probably 10 days, 2 weeks before they showed up, they were setting their army camp up, and they actually had snipers surrounded my house and high-tech communication. And so I knew they was in the area. They was closing down the roads and access to the public lands. And we had about, probably at least 100 cars moving around, non-marked government vehicle, government licensed cars, and they were carrying armed soldier-type men, full uniform, full, equipped with automatic weapons and all those things. Those people were around for about 2 weeks before the stand down, the standoff.
Now, one of the things that kind of strikes people is the notion that your house, your children were subjected to snipers.
Yeah, this was happening, like I said, several days before the BLM started the roundup, the seizure of the cattle. I knew they was there, and we knew they was there. I kept saying to the media, I said, we have these snipers out here. They're only pointing their guns at Cliven Bundy. They're not pointing their guns at you or anybody else. They had those guns zeroed in on me, and so that was going on for several days. And then when it got closer to the point of they started to gather these cattle, then my family started to get involved. And then we've got pictures and lots of evidence of where they was pointing their sniper guns at my family and even little babies.
When the general media started to pick up on the notion that there were snipers, and you also started, at the same time, I believe, you started hearing from militia groups around the country.
Well, one of the things that sort of surprised me, and this is just coming out lately, we're 4 months past the standoff, and now I'm finding out not only the federal government and their agents had snipers, but I am also finding out the Clark County Sheriff had snipers pointing at my head and other people's heads also, and that was released through one of their snipers. The Las Vegas News now is making sort of a big deal out of the last couple of weeks.
So, we just had Dan Johnson on earlier this morning, and he talked about the snipers that were positioned in Missouri, Ferguson, Missouri. And, we're starting to see, obviously, a real consistency between behaviors in Ferguson and also behaviors of the paramilitary, the military, militarization, if you will, of our police forces. So that's kind of interesting information that Clark County also had their snipers out there. Now, one of the stories.
Yeah,
go ahead.
This is sort of shocking to me because I felt like, I've always said Sheriff Gillespie went and hid under the table. But the more I learned about this in the aftermath of it, it seemed like it was premeditated. In other words, the feds, the state, and the county had premeditated this all beforehand. We the people and those that assisted and supported Bundy's ranch, they never premeditated anything. We just was sort of doing the best we could at the time, and our actions was at the moment not premeditated. But the feds and this army was premeditated, and so when we come against them, we found out that they was already organized, already in place, and they already, they had their snipers, and they had all of their weapons pointed at us, and they planned on, massacring us, or at least arresting us, because we found boxes of handcuffs. We had boxes of handcuffs. Of course, we've seen where they had hundreds of people with armed guns pointing at us. And in other words, it was very well planned. This brings something forward that I don't know if you people understand. We talk about Agenda 21. Here's something that's sort of interesting. What do you know about fusion? Fusion, I'm learning a little more about this. It seems like this is an organization where maybe the UN, the feds, the state, the county, even your local police, city policemen, they're putting their heads together and organizing themselves. And it seems to me like this was done, and all of these forces come towards Bundy Ranch as an organized force. Talk about a police state and talk about something that's a little bit scary that's happening in America. Bundy said, and the people that was there said, well, we're not going to put up with this anymore. This is not going to happen again in the United States of America. And yet again in Ferguson, we see this sort of the same thing happening. We the people cannot allow this type of a police force to come against we the people. We can't let it happen anymore.
You know, Cliven, you told me a story which I thought was really just an incredible story. Was the day that you put up the flagpoles and you had to travel to Las Vegas. In the morning, you left an area that was an armed camp with snipers that were pointing their guns at your children, and you went to the meeting and you came back, and what happened?
Yeah, I'd like to tell you that story. That's quite interesting. When the difference between depression, a police state, and the freedom. This was probably on a Thursday morning before the standoff, which was Saturday. I went to Las Vegas to talk to the Clark County Sheriff Gillespie, and I did talk to him that morning. And you know, basically, I said I found him under his desk, and when I left there, I found he was still under his desk. But here was what happened before I left. I left about daylight in the morning from the ranch house. And when I pulled up just a block away from my house, you know, I couldn't even hardly get onto the oil road because there's federal cars, federal agencies, and they was blocking my driveway. They didn't stop me, but I moved forward, and they was probably between there and the freeway, which is about 5 miles. I probably encountered at least 30 more vehicles that were stopping me, not totally stopping me, but interfering with my driving. And when I got on the freeway, I knew at least 2 vehicles was following me, and they followed me towards Las Vegas, Nevada. When I got there, I had lost them or didn't know where they was. But anyway, I talked to the sheriff, and I didn't come home until about noon or so that day, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And my family had come to the ranch. We're getting supporters from all over the country coming to assist us. And you got to remember, this was after that showed the abuse of the federal agencies on my kids and family with the lasers and throwing them to the ground and arresting them and all those things. This was a day or probably a day after, maybe 2 days after all that had happened. And when I left here, it seemed like that we was totally in a policing state. All of the access roads were closed. There was, you know, I didn't even dare stop or slow down. I just had to try to keep it moving. That was one scene. Now let me tell you the scene when I come home. The scene when I come home, I come down off the freeway towards the Virgin River, and I see American flags flying. And not only American flags, there was county flags and state flags and American flags flying on the flagpoles. There was American flags lined up along the highway. I could not see any of those white cars with government plates on. They were gone. There was a compound where they had their helicopters flying in, and they had the communication trailers and you know, the whole army set up. That whole camp had disappeared. The signs on the side of the roads where it said the area's closed, the road closures those signs were gone. I could see cattle on the river grazing, and people, you know, the feeling, I can't believe, can't hardly express the feeling of freedom and liberty was back on my ranch one more time. We could breathe, we could think, we could be happy. The difference between when I left in the morning and when I come back in the afternoon, I'll tell you, it was a blessing from our Heavenly Father how great things can change. And in America, it shows if people will stand up and take a hold, they can change things that fast. On my ranch, it changed within 30 minutes.
Well, Cliven, you know, that was the same day you raised the flags.
Yes, that was the first time the flags was raised, yes. My family and friends raised those flags while I was gone to Las Vegas.
Now let's go to the standoff real quick, and then maybe just a few minutes on that, and then we're going to take questions from the audience because I know people are anxious to ask you.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit better. Thank you.
Is that a little better? All right. About the standoff and how you got your cattle back, you can comment on that for a few minutes, and then we're going to ask questions from the crowd here.
Okay. Well, you know, from the time I came back from Las Vegas, the flag was raised. There was a couple of days past there, and of course, people from all over the United States came to support me. militias started together, and you know, I was getting called from militia groups across the United States, and they was asking, do you need me, or do you want us to come, or are you asking for us? And my answer was always to them, I said, you guys have got to do what you want, whatever you think. I'd get a call back and they'd say, are you asking for us? And I'd say, no, I'm not asking for you. But it finally came down to the point of talking about the militia. It came down to the point of them saying, do you need this? And I said, yes, I do need help. And they started to show up. And the militia came from all over the United States. The people that supported Bundy's came from all over the United States. I felt like that probably over half of my guests came east of the Mississippi River. So a lot of these people were coming 3,000 and 4,000 miles to help. Now this went on for a couple of days. Saturday, the 12th of April, was the day of the standoff. When that day come, we had sort of summoned the county sheriff to come, and he was trying to negotiate a little bit, and we told him we wouldn't visit with him without being in front of the crowd. And so Saturday morning, I think at 9 o'clock, we met with the sheriff underneath the flags, and the sheriff had a negotiation for us, which we the people did not accept, and then we had a demand for the sheriff. The demand for the sheriff was basically disarm the bureaucrats, disarm the BLM, take their guns away. And we gave that sheriff 1 hour to do that. And then there was probably, you know, maybe 20 media people there with cameras. We told them to go and bring us back a report in 1 hour how the sheriff was coming and taking these guns away. And we actually demanded they take the guns away and bring them back to the people and put them underneath the flags. Well, after an hour, we asked the media, well, what's happening? What are you reporting? No report. An hour and 15 minutes, no report. And the audience, we the people, were getting pretty upset. They were saying, well, it's time to do something. And finally they decided it's time to get to cattle. And see, we hadn't talked about cattle yet. We've been talking about disarming the bureaucrats. And now somebody mentions get the cattle. And after that length of time, the audience was ready to do something. And I said, well, there's a job to be done. Let's get her done. And when that happened, there was about 50, 60 horses coming running off the hill with the flags, and all of the people running, getting in their cars, which there's hundreds of them, even maybe 1,000 of them with cars, and they headed towards I-15 freeway, which is the freeway between Las Vegas, Nevada, and say Salt Lake City. And of course, they crowded that freeway, shut the freeway down, and the cattle were about approximately 5 miles from where the flags were, and the people started together, and that's where the standoff between we the people and the federal government. And the federal government had an army, well equipped and well armed, and they had their guns pointed down we the people's throat. And we the people, they had a job to do. They had been on their knees praying, and I wasn't there. But what they testify is that they had no fear, and they marched in front of those guns and demanded that they turn those cattle loose. And not only demanded, they demanded the government and their army to leave, and to give them the time. And after just a short time, they picked up and left. And then we the people, moved forward, and there was 3 older ladies that had been, one of them had been abused, had been thrown down, and it was their privilege to open the corral gates on the cattle and turn the cattle back to their natural native habitat, which is my ranch. And those cattle were turned out and free, and the federal government left and moved completely out of the state, out of the county, out of the state, and is up to this point. We have never seen another federal car in this part of the county.
Terry, we're going to turn it over to questions now to the crowd, because I know some people want to ask questions and be quiet. So Mr. Terry Repose is going to be walking around with the microphone, so just hang on, we'll listen up and get a question.
How the heck are you, Cliven?
Thank you. I'm just fine.
Good, buddy.
Yeah, Cliven, I wanted to find out, I know you're esteemed senator from Nevada there is Harry Reid, and not to throw any stones, but I would if I could. And there's been reports that his son has some kind of a solar operation in the area of your ranch, and that seems to be some of the motivation for them trying to get the ranch. How true is that? Do you know anything about that?
Well, I do know rumors, and I've seen some documents where their names are on it. There's no doubt that Harry Reid is, what they're wanting my ranch for is not really the solar system. What they're wanting my ranch for is a mitigation for the desert tortoise and endangered species. And what they're doing is they're going to put the solar system somewhere else in the southern Nevada. And when they do that, they like the tortoise, they have a take. That means they get to kill the tortoises, but they got to provide some habitat, protection. It's all a bunch of environmental wacko stuff, but nevertheless, there's big money in this. And so if Harry Reid can, say, turn my ranch over to be a tortoise habitat and get rid of the mitigation fee process where they can take these tortoises in the area where they want to construct these solar plants, this could be worth millions of dollars to Harry and his son.
Yes, my question is, there were reports that there were numerous head of cattle killed on your ranch. Is that true?
Yes, it was terrible abuse the way they treated these cattle. They run them across this rocky desert with helicopters, and in the process they damaged the cattle's feet and abused them, and they ended up killing some cattle. And some of them they killed with the guns, even shooting them out of a helicopter. But there was mass graves, and we only opened one mass grave up, and it had 6 head of cattle in that grave. I have reports there was 4 other mass graves that we never did open up. So how many cattle they actually killed and buried, I don't know. But I figured that I probably lost as many as 50 head of cattle. We had 27 dogie calves. We didn't know what ever happened to their mothers. So yeah, they was not only thieves and thugs. They was very destructive to my cattle and to my property, my range improvements. It's hard to believe that human beings would treat animals and property in this sense. And when they ruin these range improvements, they're also ruining the water source for wildlife.
My name is Lydia Gutierrez, and I wanted to ask you, the U.S. Congress that we have, as a majority are civil-minded people that we have in Congress. Did any of our congressmen come out and support you and fight within Congress for your battle?
No, they never showed up. I had quite a few state legislators from mainly Arizona had like a committee of about 40 people came. A few came from Nevada. I think there was some came from California. Utah had several. So I did have some political support. There was actually a blog saying Bundy supporters or something. It was sort of a political thing. It was quite surprising who did support me. But here, approximately a couple of weeks ago, Congress had a hearing on sort of the matter, and it was sort of interesting. Congress was asking why the BLM had guns and why they had this army. Like they were surprised the BLM had this army. And they asked me, what do you have to say about Congress wanting to know about this army? And I said, well, I want to know why Congress sponsored it, why they supported it.
I'm going to have to interrupt you here, but we have a fire situation here in the building, so we're going to have to leave the building and come back in about 10 minutes maybe. So we'll be pinging you back, okay? Sorry.
Hang on here. Yeah, good luck.
In about 10 minutes, we'll try and get back a hold of you. The fire drill, you believe that?
This might be part of fusion, you know.
Yeah.
There has been a fire emergency in the building. While this is being verified, please leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway.
Okay, Cliven, we are back. Hopefully nobody's going to pull an alarm again. But from what I understand, they showed up in force here with the fire engines, including an armored car or something like that.
Well, you know, I'm sorry. I'm sort of used to this kind of excitement. About every day it seems something, this is sort of how my life is. So when I seen the flashing lights and sirens, I thought, well, they must be out here after me. I didn't realize it was after you guys. But I do have something to say to these people. If you're patriots, how come you left me here to burn?
Ooh. Okay, Terry, we got some more questions coming your way, Cliven, and then we're going to let you go because we really appreciate your patience. I actually, you probably enjoyed the sideshow, right?
Yeah, I did.
You got to remember, ladies and gentlemen, he can see us. So, go ahead,
Okay,
Terry.
now we have a question over here.
Hey, how do you feel about your cowboys herding turtles instead of cows?
Well, I'll tell you something. You know, those tortoises have always been an interesting creature to us cowboys. You know, from the time I was a little kid until this time, we never ever passed a tortoise without sort of recognizing him and sort of paying a little special attention to him. He's always been something sort of special in our life, in our cowboy career. We sure don't mean any harm to him. And my cows and my neighbor's cows for 100 years have got along just fine with those tortoises. So I welcome the tortoises. I hope they just have a long, happy life.
Okay, now for the real question. Was there any BLM agents that were local to your area that were working with the establishment?
Well, as far as I know, all of the local BLM were, when we're saying local, they're Las Vegas, they're 80 miles away from me, but as far as I could tell, all of the local or native BLM, Park Service, even Fish and Game, I don't know about state Fish and Game, but I know there's some Arizona Fish and Wildlife people there. All of these agents seem to come together to whip on Bundy and his supporters.
Cal Bundy, how much property did they steal from your ranch, and how much did they destroy on your ranch? And
Well,
can you give
they
us
probably destroyed $100,000 worth of cattle and probably about the same amount of structures. We've never been able to get the water lines and the pipe and tanks and everything back installed. But there's probably at least $100,000 of damage there. If even a lot more if you hired a contractor to put them back.
Mr. Bundy, have you considered running for sheriff?
I've had that offered, and we definitely need a good sheriff in Clark County. No, I'm not interested in running for a sheriff, but let me tell you, I do believe that the county sheriff has the only constitutional jurisdiction and authority, policing power and arresting power in the particular county. And so I do honor that position very much, and I do think that we, the people, need to pay attention and make sure we have good county sheriffs. We need to have constitutional county sheriffs that understand the Constitution. And the county sheriff shares part of we, the people's sovereignty. We are sovereign, and we give some of our sovereignty to that sheriff, and we also pay our sheriff. Remember how we do this. we elect our sheriff and we pay our sheriff and give him a little bit of our jurisdiction. And his job is to protect our life, liberty, and property. That's very important. And he needs to do his job. We need to have a good sheriff in there so he will do his job. Now, we don't want our sheriff to have to do everything. And if we, the people, are not willing to stand up for our rights and our property and try to protect our property, then I don't think we should expect our sheriff to do that. But when we stand up for our rights, then the sheriff is supposed to come in and protect our life, liberty, and property. That's what we pay him for. That's why we elected him.
Mr. Bundy, my question is this: did they already start putting up solar panels on the lands that you know were lost, the other farmers' lands?
They haven't tried to put solar panels up on my ranch, but I have noticed that between here and, my ranch in Las Vegas, they are putting solar panels up in the desert out there. Whether that has anything to do with the mitigation on my ranch, I don't know.
Mr. Bundy, I understand that Sheriff Richard Mack was there with you, and he's a good friend of mine. He was giving me a kind of day-to-day report what was going on. I wondered how many other good sheriffs who were constitutional sheriffs were there supporting you.
Yes, Sheriff Mack. Okay, I'm sort of losing your voice, but I think I've got the question. Yes, Sheriff Mack did come out here and stand with us and with the people, and there were other sheriffs. There were sheriffs that come from around the country, several of them that came and stood, and several of them came after to our celebration pickups or picnics. And so they have been county sheriffs from around the country supporting me and showing up and showing their support.
Hey, Cliven, we're going to have to cut it off now, and I really want to thank you. It's been really an honor to have you here on the Liberty Tour and Agenda 21 Radio, and I know everybody here in Northern California, Redding, and all the places where everybody have come around. We have people from Southern California and Central California that have come to see you and take part in what we're doing here on the Liberty Tour. So I really want to thank you very much for being here with us, and congratulations, and we totally support you.
It's a great honor to be with you, and thank you. This is a great land, America, and let's make sure we stand up for our Constitution, and let's bring our government close to home. We the people, I think this Bundy standoff has proved that we the people do have some power and jurisdiction. We are sovereign. We have a Constitution that backs us, and I think the good Lord backs us also. So let's get the job done and have some freedom and liberty, and thank you.
Cliven, one thing I want to ask you, and I think this is a great way to end it, but your brand that you put on your cattle, there is a V over an O. What does that mean?
Well, victory over oppression is what the T-shirt says. So victory over oppression, I brand my cattle with a VO on the left hip. That means that that belongs to Cliven Bundy. And their cattle grazing on this land because of you people and your support, and thank you for that. That's why Bundy Ranch, that VO brand still stands.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you very much. Cliven Bundy.